Folks, welcome to our seminar, Probate and Real Estate. Ask the Pros. I'm Evan Saint-Gerard, your co-host, Dean
And I'm Dean
Graber,
Graber.
and we also
Andrew
have,
Jaloza.
and so we're the team, basically. The reason why we put this together is, unfortunately, this is a part of life that happens a lot. And as we see a lot, some people have plans, some people don't. And we want to make sure that everybody has a plan, at least have a conversation with one another. Because this is a conversation that needs to be had. It's uncomfortable, but we need to have this conversation, have a plan, and know what's going to happen. Basically, when unforeseen things happen, at least you have a plan. You can start with something. So, gentlemen, you want to start?
Yeah, well, I just Dean Graber from Keller Williams. I just wanted to talk about a little bit, like when we're meeting people who are thinking of buying or selling their home, they have a plan. They hopefully putting a plan together. Buyers are putting together a plan, for what types of homes they're looking for, school districts, neighborhoods, and so forth. And sellers are putting together a plan where they're moving to, how their home is going to be sold, what price we're looking for. Are we keeping this stuff? Are we not keeping this stuff? Whatever is going on. What's our timing? How's it all going to work out? Are our kids going to be okay in the new schools? Whatever it is. But this planning how you sell your house in the case of somebody not being here anymore, what happens, how money is left, how money is distributed amongst other family members is a huge part of this. And this is just from my heart, my thought on this, from what I've seen from families, I see two types of situations. I see a well planned out family process where everyone's thoughts and wishes are known in advance to all the siblings, to everybody. And that's all nice and that's great. But sometimes all the pieces aren't completed yet and the court has to still intervene. And it's because something was left out. Something, the wishes are there, but a piece was left out. Now the court comes in to handle that piece. That court piece could take a long time, many months. And in some cases, a market could shift on you and it could cost you a lot of money if prices change, if situations change. So that's one thing that happens. And then there's the other part where family members aren't all in agreement. It wasn't fully discussed. Now they're under duress. Someone might have passed away, something's going on in the family and they're forced to sell. And we're all thinking, what did mom and dad, what did pops think? This is what I thought they think. And it's just not the case. So they're not even at the court part yet. And they have a mess on their hands. So this is where we're introducing also Andrew Jaloza to sort out some pieces of that mess. And then I wanted to talk at the after that also just about how it works with like multiple listing service and getting a home listed when things aren't settled. And then a story, a good story and a less good story, but I'll be brief on them.
I kind of wanted to add one little thing, just for it's not just older people. I think anybody who's buying a house right now or have bought something recently is definitely a conversation they should be having, especially if you have little ones. You want to make sure that basically they're protected. You don't want to see things get tied up basically after you pass away. The family is struggling and trying to figure out what they need to do. So you want to come up with a plan, have your wishes laid out, and it's just an ironclad plan basically, so everybody knows exactly, all right, this is what we need to do. And it's best to always reach out to people. This is why we're putting these webinars together, so people get an idea of what to do when this does come up.
Well, the one thing on just one segment on that with planning early, I mean, young people buy life insurance also, and they think, well, why do I need to buy it? But the life insurance person is going to explain the reasons why you need to buy it at a young age. It'll have a greater benefit for you at an advanced age, at a later age. So same thought process on this. The earlier you start, the better things probably end up with all of this. So Andrew?
Hello, thank you. I appreciate both of you inviting me here tonight. And I think that it's a great topic. It's very timely considering where we've been the last 2 years, all the craziness of, people realizing that, if not now, when? When are you going to make some plans if a pandemic doesn't wake you up to the fact that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow? I don't know what will wake you up to that fact, right? I mean, we had here in New York City, we were the epicenter for a while. And, truthfully, a lot of people who ended up in places that they didn't want to and ended up being treated with things that they may not have wanted to, may have been able to change that equation had they done some planning. People who passed on during this pandemic, or pass on regularly. If they had taken some time and made some plans, then maybe their outcomes would come out differently too. So I just want to introduce myself. I am Andrew Jaloza. I am the principal attorney at the Estate Planning and Elder Law Group. And what we do is we help families. So we help families. Families is the number one thing. You know, when you walk in and you think about, you know, what am I doing my plan for, right? Am I protecting my house? Am I saving my money? No, what we're doing is taking care of our family, right? Family especially, you know, is the most important thing, your loved ones, that things are done well. As Dean said, there's two ways it happens. There's planning in place early, and there's planning not in place at all. You know, and like I say here, we have two different types of planning. We have vertical planning and we have horizontal planning. You know, you guys want to take a stab at what vertical planning is?
I'm gonna let you go ahead, answer it.
So vertical
Up
planning.
and down, so
You're sitting here talking to me, sitting up vertically. You're
Yep.
standing up and talking to me. You're vertical, and you can choose anything you want, right? You make any plan you want. Like you know, as Dean says, starting early, starting young. You're not going to start with, you know, this massive tax trust that's going to protect against millions of dollars, unless you're young and have millions of dollars. But my point is that there's always a plan depending upon what stage of life you're at, or don't plan. And horizontal planning is me talking to you in a hospital bed, trying to get your last wishes in, or worse, you're in the funeral home and you're there because everybody else is coming to see you, and your family needs to make that plan because there's no plan in place. As Dean said, it's kind of like you're under the worst horrible circumstances, and now you're trying to guess what it is. Your family's trying to guess what you wanted. You know, I have people who do planning for what they want to happen at end of life. I had this woman walk in, she had a 14-page plan. She had horses, she had music, she knew exactly what she wanted. What's the chance you think she would get any of that if she didn't have a plan and have a plan to pay for it too, right? So she had a plan, she had insurance that was going to pay for it. Insurance is an important part of estate planning, and it really helps, especially younger people. You buy a house, you have a mortgage commitment, right? You know, you're a young family, you have a mortgage commitment. It's a good idea to have insurance. And that's sort of estate planning, right? You're planning for the future, that God forbid something happens, you die young, your family is going to be okay because they're not going to be strapped with a mortgage that they can't pay off. So that's why I think that, you know, care planning is good for that, right? Not just that though, you know, just in general, it's always good to have a plan. Isn't it so nice when you have a plan, and even when things don't work out, you have a way to pivot quickly because you know what's going to happen, you know what's going on, and things work out your way. Not planning really is just leaving things up to chance. And what happens, especially, you know, what happens, God forbid, you go on a trip with your lovely young wife, lovely husband, and something happens to both of you. Who's taking care of your kids? You know, do you want your sister-in-law to take care of your kids? Maybe it's your friend who has, you know, like your sister-in-law who has debt and doesn't know what to do with a dollar. You give her $1, she spends $5, or you want it to go to your friends. Whatever money you left, whatever you did, you know, like whatever property you have, to have a responsible friend who now is a successful person who's shown to be, you know, organized and the kind of role model you want your kids to grow up with. Who do you want to take care of them? So guardianship directions for young couples inside, you know, a will, a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney. Those documents are very important. When you turn 18, no one in the world has any control over things that you own in your life, in your own name. If something happens to you, if you get hit by a car, if something happens and you go into some kind of comatose state, if you just lose your mental capacity, nothing. Having a plan in advance and having people who you know and love you and understand how you wanted things to happen is a good thing, because doing that, you have the chance of things working out well for you.
Can I say something, Andrew? I just want to interject on one thing here. Everyone always, again, I'm speaking from my own family. If you mention anything about planning, they're like, oh no, I don't want to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about it. But the curious thing, I think deep down, everybody wants to talk about it. Nobody knows how to talk about it. I think people are curious, and you know, if you're unsure what happens when mom and dad pass away, or when something happens to yourself, You're going to be just as unsure, even more unsure when the event actually happens. And just a quick story, my dad had this envelope he used to share with my sister and I, and he wrote on it, was called "In the Event." He had done all of this, but he would update, I have my bank account with Chase, Astoria Federal, whatever. And he kept doing that. And every time he came over, we came over, my sister and I walk in and we see this white envelope. He goes, my father would say, I changed this. Let me go over this. We'd be like, oh no, we don't want to know. I know we both wanted to know though. Neither one of us said anything, but I know how we felt. So you feel a certain way, you act a different way. I did anyway. I think most people are the same with that. But this conversation has to be had, and the planning has to be done, so there is no bad event in a sense after the event. Go on, I'm sorry.
Very true, very true. What I find is there's several reasons why people don't want to talk about it. Some people are superstitious. They think that if you put this plan in place, it's curtains, going soon. Like it's you're sealing your own fate by taking the time to do these plans. Some people they're not organized, they're not planners, they're not careful. They don't want to do that because they're not used to doing those kind of things. And most people, who wants to think about mortality? Who wants to think about what happens if I'm getting sick? You really don't want to think about it, but when you don't think about it, the consequences really can be very dire. And especially as it relates to dealing with your property, right? How many times, like in our businesses, how many times do we find that there's a piece of property someone's interested in selling, they're sure they have the right to sell it, and they come in and you start moving down the process and you find out, okay, like I'll tell you the story, it happened today. It's, like it happens all the time. I have this gentleman, has a house, is in foreclosure, and he has a foreclosure date. It's next week. And we get a title, and it turns out that we all thought he was the son of the person who owned the house. Turns out he was the grandson. So what happened to his mother and father? Because, if grandma died without a will, and grandma died without, passing the property on because the property was in grandma's name and he took it on in his own name as a sole heir, what happened to the rest of his family, right? Because when you get involved with real estate, you get involved with a title company. The title company's job is to make sure that when you're passing on this property, you're taken care of, and you can follow the title back in the beginning of time to make sure that this is all right and all correct, so that the person coming to the table has the right to sell it. You don't want to get to the table or near the table to find out that the person doesn't have the right. We have about 7 more days to put things together to try to fix this situation, because he never told us. We never knew that he was the grandson. And now he has to go and get documents from the Department of Health to try to prove what this family chain looks like. Or do things in advance, right? Have that just in case. I don't remember the in the event envelope, right? This is, if it happens, this is where you need to look, because it's really important. We don't teach our kids enough about this kind of stuff. We don't speak to our family about it because it's like a taboo subject. It's like talking about cancer. Nobody wants to talk about cancer. My family, nobody talked about it. Oh, she's got cancer. They don't even want to say the word. People don't want to talk about mortality. They don't want to talk about, what happens when I'm not going to be here anymore. And as Dean says, we all really want to know. I mean, I can't tell you, everybody who comes into my office says, something, I've been talking about it for so long, I'm finally here. Why did you get here? Well, my friends passed away, 3 weeks ago, or, an event, a painful event will often get you to do that, right? Because it happens smoothly or it doesn't happen smoothly.
That's the biggest thing that you just said, though, to me. It can be a smooth transition or not a smooth transition.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to share something for myself. Is basically when my father passed away a few years back, he took care of all the financial stuff. So he didn't really give us privy. We weren't privy to a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So finding everything and just putting everything together was kind of a hassle. And when that happened, basically, my mother basically was always talking about this, exactly what Andrew just said, was talking about this for a while, and she started putting her stuff together. So every now and again, she knows how to push my buttons with certain things. And she's like, Evan, if something ever happens to me, here's the envelope, similar to what Dean's father did with Dean. Here's an envelope. And I'm like, I don't want to look at the envelope. I don't even want to see it. I'm just going straight to the kitchen, because she knows she's going to get my attention basically when I'm in the kitchen, because let's face it, I'm always in the kitchen. And she'll wait till as soon as I get my plate, I'm sitting at the table. she'll whip out the envelope, and I'm like, I look at it, I know what it is. I'm like, all right, let's have the conversation.
Yeah.
But like you guys said, it's something we're going to be beating into your heads. You have to have the conversation.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, right? You have so many other things in your life that you try to, make it easier. You try to do it in a way that, that's organized and so that it works out better. This is just works out better when you take the time and make the effort just to take, to create whatever plan is appropriate for you in your life, right?
All right.
So,
I see that we have a question from Barbara. Do you want to take the question now, or do you want to?
sure. You
All
can take the question now.
All right, Barbara, I'm going to allow you to talk. Barbara, what's your question?
Mute. Okay.
Barbara.
Hello? Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Hello, Barbara.
We can hear you.
Hi, guys. I missed the first part, but what I want to know is how do I get started with putting this plan together and whatever I got to do?
Well, number one, you're in a webinar like this, you're getting information. You're going to seek out professionals that you trust.
Who
They're going to give you the.
That's
I'm sorry?
it. Seek out who?
You're going to speak
Andrew.
up to professionals like this, like Andrew, who's right there on your
Oh.
screen. You're going to speak to a probate attorney, an elder law attorney, and then take it from there. And just have an appointment, sit down, and have a conversation with them.
But Andrew
Probate attorney.
Andrew will be sending you his information. I don't know, Andrew, if you sent it already to the people who registered or how
Yeah,
you-
everybody has our information through the when they registered, so
Yep.
you'll have
We'll
our
also put it
information.
in the chat. We'll put it in the chat too. We'll put it in the
Okay.
chat so that you can grab it from there too. And so, yeah, like that's what we do. We do estate planning and elder law. We can help you with that. If you're looking for real estate questions, these are the two guys to go to. These are the guys who really know what they're doing. That they make it so easy. It's just easy, smooth, and comfortable. That's how they make it. And they're really they think of everything, and they're really, really very client-centered. They want to make sure that they take really great care of their clients. And when you come to my office, that's what happens too. We take care of people. We treat you like family because it's not an easy thing for you to get to my office to go have a conversation with a lawyer about death and dying. Nobody wants to talk about becoming incompetent. You just don't want to. You don't want to think about that happening.
All right, Barbara has another question. Barbara?
Okay, follow up from Barbara.
Where is your office?
We're located in Glendale. Glendale is in Queens.
I live in Jersey. As you
Okay.
know, Dean.
Well, you
I
can call
know.
my office on the
Okay.
number that you'll get, and we can certainly refer you to a New Jersey attorney.
Okay. Thank you.
Not a
You're
problem.
welcome.
You got
Thanks.
it.
Guys,
No.
a couple other quick situations that came up talking about planning. Just
Yep.
again, Evans and I wanted to do this with Andrew because just because of experiences. I mean, we do sell real estate, but obviously we see deals that start and don't finish or start and get more than a hiccup in the middle. And a lot of it is because of the lack of planning. Again, we had a situation where all family members weren't on board with something. And there was a trust, but there was a clause in the trust that led this property to somebody else. And it's odd, but so we started and had to stop, and we're still stopped right now until the family comes around and does what possibly could have been done earlier. Then right now a house sitting empty and a mortgage not getting paid on a house, and everybody is not getting a benefit of this. Everybody
There's
is-
more stress basically being
Taking
added basically
some on
with
the
every
chin.
month. With every
It's-
month, basically the house sits there empty, not being occupied.
Yeah.
It's more stress. There's more
Right.
tax money that's not being paid. There's more bills that they're sitting there, they're piling up.
Right, it was financially, and then there's the emotional, the family aspect of it. Then there was another family, I'm looking at my notes here, obviously no names are ever mentioned with this, but there's another family that did all the plans and all got an agreement and everybody was fine, except nothing was ever filed with the court. So they waited, the house went for sale and it got filed for the court, and then COVID hit. And COVID was, how long were courts closed? A year. We're still not done with this deal. And it started right before COVID, like, February of, 2020. And, so this is what happens. If that was taken care of in 2015, when it was first decided, if it was finished, then, they would have been able to sell. Again, it's another house that's empty right now. And doesn't have to be that way. It could be someone else's home and his family could have moved on from this situation and still, instead of having it linger. There's so many reasons that the planning is important.
Well, the planning is also important to determine yourself, to make decisions for yourself, because you don't have to make a plan. There is a plan for you. You know what that plan is? The laws and the rules of the state of New York. Aren't you happy? Don't you think that's going to work out just exactly the way you want? Of course not, right? It's
New
not
New
gonna
York
work.
always has everybody in their best interest.
Yeah, always, always. And so the point I make is that, people can make the decision. I don't want my family to have to go through court. I don't want to have my family deal with probate. Probate is a process. When someone dies and you have a will or you don't have a will and you have property, there has to be a way to pass the property from the estate of the person who died to whomever it's going to. That may be to the heirs, the distributees, if you don't have a will, to the beneficiaries, if you do have a will, or if you don't have anything in place, then you're going to go according to the laws of intestacy, who is going to say who's going to get this property. Oftentimes a family house doesn't turn out to get to the family or the right family members without proper planning. Because if you're a married couple and you have no will and you pass away, then your house is going to belong to your spouse and your children. If you don't intend it to go all to your wife or all to your husband and then to your children, you need to do some plans, because how the law presents it creates a big problem for some people. In fact, if you have an unconventional marriage or relationship, you're same-sex marriage, or you're two people who have lived together for 40 years, have 4 children, and there's no common law marriage here, right? So if one of you passes away, the property does not go to the survivor. It goes
Heavens.
all to the children.
Ronald.
I've seen it.
I know.
I've seen it happen.
Actually,
know?
that's very common. We have a lot of people with common law. Whatever the situation is,
There's no common law.
well, whatever you want to call it, basically, they've been together for a while. They just never got official paperwork, and unfortunately, one passes away, and there's other family members involved, and there's always a fight between who's actually got the
Well,
rights to the home.
in this case, there's a public administrator to handle the other side of the family, who we don't even know who that is. We're 3 years into a contract on that one.
You don't want the public administrator involved in your life. Their interests are not the same as your interests. They're not interested in making sure that your family really gets it. It ultimately goes to fees, to expenses, and to the state of New York and the city of New York. That's where the money
Well,
and the property.
our feeling is that the public administrator is working on, not on behalf of the public, but on behalf of the state of New York and the county of Nassau.
Absolutely,
And
they are.
almost want this home going to someone else other than the people that are in contract right now.
Which is horrible.
Seems like
Which is
that.
horrible. Because it's
You guys
not what
wanna-
the family would have wanted.
Did you guys want to open it up to questions basically from the audience?
Yeah, I just want to mention one more
No,
thing about probate and the choices besides probate. So most people, I think, if you listen to the word on the street, the idea to avoid probate is very important. Susie Orman on public television has been saying it for years. It's in the internet. It's all over. Try to avoid probate. Because number one, it's expensive. It's frustrating. You have to go through the hassles of all the delays, and you're now under the court and the state's rules rather than choosing your own. Why we use a trust? Because it helps you avoid probate. It puts the control back in the family. You create your own family rule book. You say who takes over when something happens to you. Either you get sick or you pass away. It works for you while you're alive, or will only works for you when you're dead. And it enables you to maintain control in a way that you can pass it on readily, leave your instructions there so that it can be carried out by your family without going into court. And you can also provide yourself protection if you're older and need long-term care issues and you're concerned about that and you want to protect your property and be able to qualify for government benefits, you need to also use a trust. Choosing a trust is not such a scary thing. And you don't have to necessarily have this gigantic thing when you think I'm doing estate planning. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of property. Why do I need to do estate planning? Well, you have a house. If you have a house, you have some money and you want it to go to your children and your family in the way you want it to go, that's your estate. And that generational wealth is the difference of creating something better for your family in a very simple and easy, smooth transition than it is to do it through a will or not have a will at all. I mean, the difficulty too, think about it, when you own property with your family members and you have different family members owning property, you have to understand how that works too. Sometimes there's survivorship rights. Sometimes there's not survivorship rights. When someone dies in the chain, sometimes the property gets split between the remaining owners and sometimes it doesn't. It's really kind of a confusing thing, right? And so, this kind of thought in advance helps to prevent the problems that we see that come up, like when you try to enter into a contract and you think you have everybody and you don't, or you don't have everybody who can actually pass on the property to the next owner. It becomes, I would say that it sounds to me like it's a frustrating thing to get to get near the closing table and find out that this is not going anywhere further as the house sits there empty, the mortgage keeps ticking, and no one's being served except maybe the government, or maybe the person who buys the tax lien, or buys the person who's going to get the property in the foreclosure sale.
So let me ask, so where do people start with you then? Like, let's say I'm starting just, young married couple, they're buying a house right now. They're in contract.
Okay.
Where would they start with you? Like, what would their road look like a little bit?
The road looks like one of two things, right? Either a basic will plan or a basic trust plan, right? So basic means healthcare proxy, power of attorney. Something happens to you while you're alive, and you either get sick or you become incapacitated, your spouse can help take care of you. Because even like if two spouses, one owns property in their own name, they have no power over the property that belongs to their husband. So say husband has the money, there's money in the husband's account in his own name. You as the wife, if he becomes incapacitated, have no way of accessing that except to go to court and have a guardian appointed. A power of attorney will help you with that. Or grandma's starting to lose her capacity, right? She has the house. You want to do some planning for her. You have to get her a power of attorney before she loses her capacity, because once she has no capacity to sign a power of attorney or to sign papers, now you have to go to court and get a guardian appointed. So a very simple document, whether you're at the beginning of your life or at the end of your life, a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy are two documents that help while you're alive and really can't take care of yourself fully, and either a will or a trust. Simple, basic documents that say, God forbid something happens that's catastrophic. There is a plan in place, a person who's going to take over, and then probably somebody who's going to take over if they can't show up. So it makes sense, especially when you're buying your house, have a conversation with someone like our firm, and we can help get you in the right size of plan for you. But have the conversation. Come to one of my webinars. I do them twice a month. You can get an understanding of what estate planning is about. There's a lot of information out there. It gets confusing and it gets a little scary. We're here to help demystify that. So,
all right, I'm gonna segue. We do have a question from Nikki, so I'm gonna allow her to talk. Nikki, you're live. What's your question? Unmute yourself.
Hi, Evans. Hi, Dean.
Hi, Nikki.
How you doing?
We're good. Say hi to
Good.
Andrew.
Hi, Nikki.
Andrew.
How you doing, Nikki?
So, Nikki,
I'm
what's your
doing well,
question?
thank you. My question is, in my case, I personally, I'm listening to all this information. Like, I have right now 3 children, 3 boys, and they're all underage. So as I'm listening to the idea of planning and putting things in place, like you said in the beginning, the first person's mind is, I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot. And obviously going to a lawyer, that's not something that, you're not going to do that if you're not entirely ready, right? Because obviously you're going to have to pay for this service. So if your children are small, and when I say small, they're not even teenagers yet. I have a 12, a 7, and 10 months. When would be a good time to, set these provisions in place? And I guess what would the cost look like if you don't have much,
Well, there are definitely low-cost solutions that will fit in your pocketbook that are going to cover something like this. Because what you need a simple, basic plan with the capacity for a trust to be created for your young children in case something happens to you. So some adult will be in charge of whatever you're leaving them until they get old enough to be able to deal with it. So, we're talking somewhere between $500 and $1,000 can get you a plan that's going to, do all of
See ya.
that in the just in case, right?
Yeah, so there's,
No?
right.
Yes?
Yes, hold on one second. I'm gonna mute her.
Nikki's
All
muted.
right, Nikki, was there anything else you wanted to add to that? Let me wait. Bear with me. I'm sorry, Nikki, can you hear me? Unmute
I
yourself.
can hear you. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm unmuted. I was going to say, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that response. Okay. So you said to set up, and just so I'm clear, a trust for the children would be different from an actual will, right?
So what I'm talking about for you, you're talking
Okay.
about, so you're a young couple, have young
Yes.
children, and are
Unmarried.
concerned. So you
Mhm.
can certainly do a trust, but you can just do a simple will at this point, right? And
Okay.
then the will, what happens with these documents we create in order to do anything in the future to protect against things happening, you need to have some planning that's going to put whatever you're leaving to your children, we'll talk in this instance, that it's going to go into a place that you can leave rules that will control it, right? Because let's say this, say you have no plans, you go out and you buy an insurance policy, you name your 3 kids the beneficiaries of your insurance policy, and you don't have any will and you don't have any trust, right? Now you pass away. Where is that money going? Well, first of all, it's going nowhere to start because your kids are too young to even receive that money because they're all minors. So without having it done in a way, without having facility to be able to take that money and put it into some kind of trust, which someone you trust and know can take over and deal with that money for them, it raises a big problem, right? So you buy that insurance policy to help them, and now what has to happen is someone has to go and become the guardian, and and then have the court looking over their shoulder to deal with, to deal with that property you're leaving them. If you don't do even a simple, like my simple basic will has what's called an underage trust. If it's under the age of 25, because I don't think that before you're 25, you don't really have the maturity to get too much money in your own hands anyway, because that's just how it is. I give my kids 10 cents, they spend 50 cents. So, it's just how it works. But I think that, an underage trust, a trust in case someone's a disabled person or has a disability or is incompetent when you give them money, so you don't ruin their benefits, that's part of my basic will. And so having that will can give you the peace of mind that you've done a plan for the future. Something happens to you, that you know that there's going to be a guardianship direction, that there's going to be a person who's going to be able to be the trustee of this trust that's going to get created, where your kids' money is going to go into until they're old enough to deal with themselves. So that's a good plan. And you can, as you continue to go through your life, you get more assets, you then make other plans. So it's not written in stone forever. Is that helpful?
Okay. Yeah, that was about to be my next question. If you were to start it when, like you said, you don't have much, and then as the years go on, you acquire things. That was going to be my next question. Do you then just keep amending whatever it is that you've already put in place?
Well, you either amend or you create new. It really depends. I don't think that there's much of a difference in the cost of the amend versus create new. And it will depend. I mean, everybody's needs aren't the same in their lifetime, right? As you get older, you have different types of viewpoints, different types of concerns, different types of things concern you. So, you go from having, you're going from having, a basic will to maybe a good revocable trust plan that just in case you don't have to go through probate. And then as you get more advanced in your life, you may need some asset protection to protect against risks in your life, or you're concerned about Medicaid, long-term care. You need to protect your property against that so you can have something and actually qualify and get benefits that you're entitled to. So this is a lifelong type of thing.
Okay.
It starts with very simple things when you're young, and you can grow into more complex things as you get older.
All right, Nikki, does that answer all your questions? Nikki, can you hear me?
Oh,
Unmute.
I keep forgetting that I have to hit unmute. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's extremely helpful.
All right.
Thank you for that.
All right, we have another question from Mike Morris, so I'm gonna mute you.
Okay.
And oops, sorry. And Mike, you're coming in. And Mike, I'm gonna ask you to. Oh, you're unmuted. So basically, what's your question, Mike? Mike, are you still there? Mike, unmute yourself. Hold on.
There was a problem with his microphone.
All right, Mike, you want to write your answer in the chat, and then
Question.
question. I'm sorry. Put your question in the chat, and we'll give you the answer. Okay, so gentlemen, continue on.
We gentlemen, you calling us gentlemen?
Yes, I'm calling you guys gentlemen. All right.
Yeah.
While you guys are getting things together, if anybody else has any other questions, please raise your hand, and then I'll find you, and then we'll bring you. Okay, Barbara has a question. Barbara, we're going to put you live. Give me 2 seconds. All right, Barbara, what's your question?
Hearing probate attorney
Mhm.
and then avoid probate, trust avoids probate. Could you kind of explain probate to me?
Yeah.
All this is new to me. I'm brand new with owning stuff.
That's why we put this together. It's for people exactly like you. That's why we put this
In my
together.
senior, years. So, and I need a lot of information. So first I want to understand probate.
Probate is the legal process that takes place in the surrogate's court of the county in which the person passed away that activates the will, or it is the process called administration that if you don't have a will, it begins by the person you name in the will called an executor, or if you don't have a will, a proposed administrator, goes to the court, files some papers, and asks to get the court's authority to go forward, gather the assets of the person who passed away, and then pass them out to whomever. It doesn't activate itself. You have to go into the court, you have to file the original will, or if there's no will, you have to file a whole bunch of papers. You have to get other people to sign off. You have to make sure you have all of the people who are interested as part of this proceeding. And then it goes to the next step. Once the letters are issued from the court, letters of authority are issued, then the executor or administrator can gather the assets and then pass them out to the people who are entitled to it. If you don't have a will, at least, the probate process also will determine from the court rules who gets the money and property. So if you want to make a decision yourself, you need to do at least a valid will so that you can say who's going to get your property, how they're going to get it, when, under what conditions that they're going to get it. Otherwise, it's just going to go according to your family tree. So if you don't want all of your brothers to get property and you die leaving no children and no parents, and all you have is 3 brothers and you want one of them to get it, not the other 2, too bad. If you die without a will, they're all getting it because the court rules, the rules of the intestacy laws of the state you're in are going to say who gets your property. Having a will at least puts that in your control. But probate is a process that takes a bunch of time. You have to notify potential creditors, so you have to wait to distribute your property out. It takes maybe about a year to settle the estate if you're lucky, especially in COVID times. And you're not in control, the court is. You want to avoid that, you use a trust because it's a document you create, put your rules in, and it's a self-activating document. Doesn't require approval from the court, it's a much less expensive, much less frustrating, and much less time-consuming process than probate. That's why we say you want to avoid probate because of all the things that probate is. Besides everything else, it's a public process. You can go onto the court's website now and see what is in everybody's estate who ever filed a will. Because that's what it is. It's open to the public. If you don't want your stuff public, if you want to make your own rules, if you want to create rules that will get carried forward while you're alive, in addition to while you're alive and you get sick and can't do it for yourself, or when you pass away, then you want to use a trust. Does that help, Barbara?
Yes, it does. Now, one other question with this estate planning, because it's my plan to come to you guys. Because I don't have a will.
You don't have a will yet.
I don't have a will yet.
But you have the will to get a will.
Yes, I have the will to get a will. And whatever else I need to set things in place before I make my transition.
What do you need?
Say again?
Did you ask what do you need to prepare yourself?
No, well, I'm asking, with this estate planning, will that help me to get to everything I need to set things in place, like the will and the insurance and this probate stuff that you just talked about?
Well,
Probate's to be avoided, but yeah.
It's a good thing to speak to an estate planning attorney.
Okay.
It's also a good thing to have a good insurance agent. It's best to have a good real estate agent who you've got right here. I mean, all of these things together will help you get your estate planning in order, right? Because estate planning is really about who's in control of your stuff, when they're in control of it, and how they're in control of it, right? Who gets it and when do they get it, right? Who's in control of it? You get to say that by making your plan. The state says who does all of that if you don't have a plan. So by us creating and helping you with that concept of who's in control, who gets your stuff, and when, we can determine all of those things for your estate plan. I mean, you buy a life insurance policy, you're technically doing estate planning, right? Because you're buying something that's going to take care of your family or somebody that you name sometime in the future when you're no longer here, right?
Yes.
That's estate planning. And that's really all estate planning is, making sure that while you're alive and well, what's the plan? What happens if you become sick or incapacitated? What's the plan? And what happens when you pass? What's the plan? You
Okay.
can also plan for what happens when your family gets it. So you can create generational planning through these documents and things that we create.
All right, that kind of segues to the next question. Barbara, did that answer your question, or did you have another one?
Yes, that's it. As long as I get the information before we, close out.
All right, no problem. So the next question is from Mike. He wasn't able to open up the microphone. His question is, let me see if I gotta make the text bigger so I can see it. So the two family members that own a home, one passes away. How does the interest of the deceased pass on?
That's a great question. So as usual, when you ask a lawyer a question, they ask you a question, right? So because the point is this, really, I can't really don't know how to answer your question without some more information. The question I would ask you is, how did they own that property jointly, right? Because if they owned it as what we call tenants in common, then the deceased heirs would then be entitled to the part of the property the person who died owned, right? And the other owner would continue to own their part. If there were survivorship rights, like it was joint tenants with right of survivorship, when one passes away, the surviving owner is now the owner of the entire property. That's how you would determine who would get it, right? And so it really depends how the property was owned between them, about who it would pass to and who their heirs are. And quite frankly, while people think that they have heirs, nobody has heirs until you die, because your heirs are not determined until your day of death, right? You have people who are the natural target of your bounty. Those are the people you call your family. Those are the people along the family tree who you want to give your property to, but you don't have heirs until you die.
All right, I think that answers Mike's question. He just wrote he understood. Thank you. All right, anybody else have any other questions? Sean, Genti, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Genti, do you have any questions? Wanda, anybody else have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand. Rayshawn, how you doing? Rayshawn, I'm gonna put you on the spot. If you have any questions, I'm gonna allow you to talk right now. So Ray, if you have any questions, feel free to ask right now.
He's on the spot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So give him a minute. All right, Ray, can you hear us? He was unmuted. All right. So Andrew, continue. I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem. I mean, what there in my world, we see very interesting things when we have real estate when you're dealing with real estate and quote unquote estates. Because as I said before, depending on how property is owned will determine how the property passes on when somebody dies. We were dealing, and I was telling Evans and Dean before about this piece of property. The last deed of record is 1893. Imagine 1893 was the last time a deed was actually filed on the property. There were 7 children of the couple that owned it originally. And at this current time, there are more than 30 people who own the property because no one has ever done another deed in all those years. And they passed it on to other people who live there, and they passed it on to other people who live there. Now, out of the 7 children, 4 of their lines have died out. And now we have 3 lines that we have to deal with to try to quiet title in a way that we can determine who's going to be the owner or owners so that we can actually monetize this property. Because you think about it, it's a house in Brooklyn. They probably bought it for, I don't know, $11 back in 1893. And now we're talking about it is worth $1 million plus. So you're dealing with all of these issues, and we have to get a genealogist involved. You have to get other people involved. We have a house that's in Suffolk County. Woman died in her 90s. Her husband died before her. Her mother was, so she was the owner because her husband died. They owned it jointly with right of survivorship. Now her mother was an only child. She was an only child. Her husband was an only child. So there's no heirs that we can actually point to. You think it would be very simple, right? Because there's no heirs. The executor is not a relative. The beneficiary is not a relative. And so we have a non-beneficiary heir and a non-beneficiary executor. It's probably going to take 3 years to get this thing unraveled because they could have done a trust. They should have done a trust.
So it's
a will.
It's a trust and a will are the 2 big things that people have to look into.
Well, again, it is a trust and a will is the things that you need to look into for the issues that happen when you die. For an estate plan, you want to talk about the issues that happen when you're alive, and you need someone else to do things for you. So a will, a trust, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, I would say are the basic documents that you would be concerned about, right? Because again, if you are alive but you're not well and you can't do things for yourself, who's going to do them for you? If you're 18 plus, your parents can't do it, your cousins can't do it, your loved ones can't do it because they have no legal authority to act on your behalf. So if you have property that requires some legal action that has to be taken and no one has any authority, you have to go to a court and ask a court to issue an order appointing a guardian.
Is the power of attorney for everything, or could it be specific for a few
Well,
items?
for a real estate transaction, usually what we see is called a limited power of attorney.
Okay.
That limited power of attorney is usually limited to the power to either purchase or sell, depending upon what the transaction is, a specific piece of property. That's what the title company wants to see, that type of thing. We have a general power of attorney. What we deal with usually is a general durable power of attorney. Durable means that if the person who signed it, the principal, signed and gave their authority to their agent, if the principal becomes incapacitated or incompetent, the power of that document continues in full force and effect. Meaning that you create this document so that if you lose your capacity, the person who you issued the authority to can still operate and do the things they need to do. When you're talking about a limited power of attorney, it's generally done to take care of a transactional thing. So there are 2 different types of powers of attorney, but a general durable power of attorney is the kind of power of attorney that we do mostly when we're doing estate planning, so that it covers whatever needs to be done.
Okay.
Andrew, could you go over what the difference between a executor and an executrix?
An executor is a male, executrix is a female. That's the funny part.
So we're not going to talk about the birds and the bees here. I think
It's two different terms that people come up with basically, and not everybody knows what that is. So
You're right. I mean, administrator and administratrix, quite frankly, I think it's come down to, we've gotten rid of those designations. We call them all administrators and or
Okay.
all executors. We no longer delineate by sex.
now,
Yeah, I didn't know
how is someone chosen to be an executor or administrator?
Is it nominated or chosen?
Well, what happens is this: you choose by putting them in your will.
Okay.
But you put you were called the testator, or used to be testator or testatrix.
Yes.
You're the person who wrote the will, and in that will you name the executor. And you say, executor, I want you to gather my assets and split it between my 3 children, 1/3 each. Someone's under age of 25, put it into a trust until they're 25. You be the trustee of that trust.
All right.
Someone dies, the guardian takes over. Your trustee is usually your guardian also. You take care of my kids, make sure that everything works out okay.
So
But when you die, that will doesn't automatically give the executor authority to do anything. It needs to first get probated, and the court has to authorize the executor to begin to do their job. So it takes 8 weeks usually before they even look at your papers. It takes several months usually for them to deliver that letter of authorization while you're sitting there with not being able to pay things because you can't get access to the property of the person who died.
well, so you mentioned probate though. Now I'm confused with this too. So I'm just curious. So if there is a will, there's still a chance that it can get probated so that you can have the executor approved?
How about this? If there's a will, it must be probated. A
Okay.
will must go through probate. That's what most people don't understand. I can't tell you how many people walk into my office. Well, we're avoiding probate, right? We have the will. No, that's the ticket to go to probate. It's also
I'm glad.
the
I'm
ticket.
glad you brought that up.
And the
I'm glad you brought that up.
administrator and the executor difference is what?
Administrator is is a situation where you need to go to court because there is no will. You have real property or other property that the person who died owned in their own name without a co-owner or a beneficiary. And now you have to have someone be the personal representative of the estate to be able to pass the property out of the estate to someone else.
All right. So
And
is
as
it-
Mike Morris just said, a trust bypasses probate. Bingo, yes. By George, you've got it, Mike, because that's how it works. A trust does not need to be probated because it is a different instrument than a will. Wills must be probated. Administration, no will, you have a piece of real property or you have a bank account in your own name, you're going to go through administration. And if you don't have someone to appoint an administrator, don't worry, the public administrator will jump right in and they'll deal with the property, right? So the point is that to avoid probate, you need to do something to make sure that your property is not owned in your own name when you die.
So can I ask you, so
That is one of two.
if you have a trust and all your bank accounts have a beneficiary, would there be probate?
No. And that's how we do it.
That's
You
what my
make
dad did. So
sure-
that's why I was just curious. I want to make sure. we
Could
didn't
could you
forget
re-
to do something.
could you repeat that one more time, just in case people didn't get that,
Sure.
the question and then the answer?
My question was, if you have a beneficiary for all your bank accounts and a trust for all your real estate, would there be probate?
And the answer is no. But here's the rub, right? That is exactly the point. Now you understand the point. We want to own our assets in such a way as we avoid probate for those things we didn't put in our trust. And we put the things in our trust that we want to make sure that we have given control to somebody else to deal with if something happens to us, right? So your real property goes into your trust. You have bank accounts. You may put them in your trust. You may name your trust your beneficiary. What if you don't want the money to go directly to the beneficiary because you're afraid that the beneficiary has special needs, right? Let's say we'll talk about that. You have kids who have special needs. If you have a kid with autism, do you want the money to go directly to him? Is that going to do any good? No. You need to make sure it goes into a special needs trust,
Okay.
rather than going directly to the kid, or it just doesn't, it can't go outright to them because it would be useless and it would be harmful to them, right? So this whole thing about, the planning is really what this is all about. It's not really so much about the documents. It's about making sure you use the right planning to make it, to customize it as necessary, right? So simple, basic planning, you can use a simple will until you get things that are more complex in your life and you want to change that. But at least get the will, because you can name your guardians in there. You can get that underage trust. You can do the things that will make things happen in a way that's as good as it possibly could be. And once you're concerned about avoiding probate, because many people are, then you start using trusts to help you deal with your property.
Andrew, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm looking at the people that are on this webinar. What happens if the person passes away in another state and the surviving relatives are in another state? I know probate law is kind of slightly different. Basically, is it different from state to state or county to county?
Well, there are definitely, we have what's called the unified court system in New York, and it's anything but unified or consistent. Every single county makes its own rules. So, it's government at its best, right? But here is the thing. When someone dies, usually the probate process takes place in the county in which they died, that they lived in, right? You could be visiting someplace and die, and you're only visiting there. That normally will take place in the county of the state in which they live. If you own property in more than one state, you need to do a probate in every state. If you die without a will or you die with a will.
Could you repeat that one more time, please? One more time.
If you own real property in more than one state and you die with a will or without a will, and you didn't put your property into a trust, you need to do a probate in every state that you own property. Because what you do is you do a probate first in the property that you lived in when you died, and then you have to do what's called an ancillary probate in the other places where you own property. So to avoid that, use a trust. Take the trust, put your 3 properties in the different states, and your New York trust, or whatever place you're living in, your trust that you create will control all of those properties and avoid probate in all of those states.
All right, we're getting close to the end of this webinar, so I wanted to throw something to the panelists. We have a lot of people in here, so I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions, please raise their hand or just put it in the chat and we'll answer it right as soon as possible. I'm going to throw out a question for you guys. We have a lot of us, I'm assuming we're different age groups right now. So for those of us who are Generation X or millennials and whatnot, and we have older parents that we want to have this conversation with them and make sure there is a plan. How would you suggest we approach them about this?
Well, you can tell them some of your horror stories that happen as a real estate agent and dealing with property. Well, I mean, the point is that I think
not me as a realtor. I mean, as one of the people who are viewing, or anybody who's viewing this for where.
Well, anybody who's viewing it, let's put it this way. Sometimes the conversation is difficult because you don't have that relationship with your parents that you talk about these things, right? But I think that in this day and age, there's just so much information out there that, there's all kinds of crazy stories. You might want to point your parent to reading one of those stories. You might, tell them, the story that you know yourself, or you might just say, listen, times are a bit different maybe than when you grew up. And right now you have a lot more property than your parents did when they are in this position. Do you want this property to go to anybody, or do you want to choose who the property goes to? Do you want to worry about the fact that if you get sick, what's going to happen to your property? Are you going to be able to pass it on to myself and my brothers and sisters, or is it going to go to the nursing home? If you don't do anything, what's going to happen is things you don't want. How do you get things to happen in the way you want to? You need to go see someone like us, an estate planning and attorney, estate planning and elder law attorney, especially if people are getting older, to find out what your options are. There's lots of information out there. We do regular webinars, at least 2 a month, and you can get information so that you can show your parents, your grandparents, whomever, this is what's going on. For yourselves, you have to talk to yourself and say enough is enough. I'm not
And
going
your
to wait
spouse.
anymore to get around to it, you know? I don't even know what a round to it is. I have this little round piece of wood. It says to it on it. If you need one of them, I'll give it to you, because then you'll have a round to it. So just come in and make that go in and have the difficult conversation, because it will change your life, and it will make your life and your family's life much easier.
Think of it this way, basically, you're taking a weight off your shoulder, off your family's shoulders. Basically, it's when you know you have a plan. The family knows there's a plan. So, and
Absolutely.
another thing I want to add is basically when you're putting plans like this together, people, your kids, whoever, basically in your family, they're gonna see this and they're like, you know what, such and such just did this. I need to do this as well. And it's because people are watching what you're doing, so you can be the first one, and then everybody else is going to follow suit as well. So just think of it, if you're doing it, if you're going to be the first person, basically, there's going to be other people doing the same exact thing as you're doing, and you want to make sure everybody has a plan. And you don't want to have unfortunate incidents where grandma spent her life basically she came from another country, she got the house, and now it's gone because there wasn't a plan and nobody had the conversation.
Failure to plan is a plan to fail. That's really what happens.
Okay.
Right,
Do you have any final questions or anything from
Yes,
anybody?
any final questions? Barbara, I'm saying your name twice because I see you're logged in twice. Janty, I think I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm not sure. Nikki, Rashawn, Sean Bennett. Anybody have a question? All right, we have a in the chat. Basically, there is a link for give us some feedback. Let us know how we did. If there's anything else you would like us to add into the next seminar, let us know. Hold on a second. Thank you, Nevin, and the end, Miss Andrew. Great information. I wish I had questions, but do you have? We'll have a replay. We'll be sending it out to you basically shortly. We have your email information. Everything will be sent over to you. I got caught on the phone. Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. All right, so all our contact information is you're gonna be getting it through the chat, and you'll also get an email. And for those of you who are here, those of you who are watching, you'll get a replay. Just reach out to us. We'll send you a link to the video. And we love you too, Nikki. All right, guys. With that being said, I'm Evan Saint-Gerard with Keller Williams Realty.
And I'm
Andrew.
Dean Graber with Keller Williams Realty. Also, I'm laughing at Nikki. Thank you, Nikki. We love you too. That's
And
great.
Andrew Jaloza from the Estate Planning and Elder Law Group. Give us a
All right,
call.
wait.
Oh,
We
wait,
do have a
Rayshawn,
we have a
final
final
question.
we have a final question. Rayshawn, I'm gonna put you hold on a second. All right.
Good
right.
evening, everyone.
Hey.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. I just had a question about if the property is already in a trust, would it be how do you resell the property from the trust if the person hasn't passed?
Well, it depends what the rules are in the trust, who has the power to do it. It's very clear who that would be, because it's defined inside the document who would be able to do that. And absolutely, I'm sure there is some power and some person who's in control to be able to do it. It's simple. If I took a look at your trust, or someone, I think that you read the trust, you see who has the authority and power to do that. If you need any help, give us a call.
Right.
Question?
Does that answer? Okay. All right. Again, we'll everybody will be getting our contact information afterwards and a copy of the video. Feel free to share this. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. That's pretty much it. Again, I'm Evan Saint-Gerard with Keller Williams Realty.
I'm Dean Keller Williams, Dean Graber. Well, you all know that.
And Andrew Jaloza, Estate Planning and Elder Law Group.
Thank you,
so
everyone.
much
And,
for
and,
coming.
and Evans and Andrew, thank you for the idea and putting this together. I
right.
got a lot out of it. It wasn't just a host here. I'm listening and learning myself.
We're all gonna be practicing what we preach as well. And we couldn't have done this without Tiffany. So everybody give Tiffany a round of applause.
Big
Thank
round
you,
of
Tiffany.
applause for
Tiffany.
Tiffany.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany.
And she's on camera. Yes.
Yes, he is.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day. If you have any questions, you know who to reach out to.